Greetings everyone, I'm Mar. Once again, this is my opinion. As you can tell a little title up there, I'm continuing my trek through all of the Undertaker's matches at Wrestlemania. This of course is Streak-A-Thon, but we are at the part in the streak where there is no more streak. Taker lost to Brock Lesnar. He had kind of a comeback match with the so-called new face of fear. And now, of his later matches, this is probably one of the more random opponents he could be facing, and that is Shane McMahon in the Prodigal Son's big return match a little over 9 years ago now. It's just the fact I'm saying that just makes me feel a little older now, because just to think that this match took place when I was in my late 20s and now I'm going towards my late 30s. It's like, wow, the time is flying. Anyway, it took place on April 3rd, 2016. Sorry, something just popped up. From Arlington, Texas at the AT&T Stadium in front of 80,000 people. Now, I'm trying to go down to the card on this thing, but it's not long to do. This was not the penultimate match on the card, but when you look at what followed it, it might as well have been, because in between this and the main event, which was Roman Reigns challenging Triple H for the WWE World Heavyweight title in a match that almost went 30 minutes, might as well have been, because the match after this was the Andre the Giant Memorial Battle Royal, and then The Rock defeating Eric Rowan in what is a glorified squash match. It was just basically a TV segment to kill more time, is what it was. Some more pop-ups. Anyway. As I mentioned already, this was Shane's return to the company. In the early 2010s, I forget what year at the top of my head, I don't have notes for it in front of me, Shane left the company. Now, for the years before this, there was always the talk of when Vince McMahon dies or is ousted from power, who would take over? Would it be Shane? Would it be Stephanie? And then once Stephanie married Triple H, there was that whole thing about that. But then Shane left randomly. And of course, there's all the speculation about what could have gone on in that. I'm not going to delve into this thing, but from how history has played out, it definitely looks like any speculation could be warranted, or it could just be rumor and innuendo, as a certain company guy would say. Now, he was out of the limelight when it comes to being involved in the wrestling business in any capacity for all those years. But he did work. He was involved in other companies. So it looks like he was trying to make it on his own. So you got to give Shane a little bit of respect for that. But with how every other McMahon, mainly Vince and Stephanie, with like little snippets of Linda when it comes to wrestling side, but when it comes to political side, way too much. So the only thing I'm going to bring up modern day is it even continues now. Nepotism at its finest. It was one of those things where a lot of us were like, yeah, I wouldn't mind seeing Shane again, because at least it'd be a different McMahon. And he came back, and we got a segment with him and Daddy Vince. And this introduces a McGuffin in here, which this is the only reason that part of this match existing makes sense, and that is that Shane is essentially trying to blackmail Vince by saying that he has a lockbox with some very bad information on him. Now, given what's come out about Vince in the years since, this McGuffin kind of takes on a unintended dark turn. But I wouldn't be surprised if some of the people who knew about the skeletons in Vince's closet suggested this as a McGuffin, as kind of like a wink and a nod to this stuff, and Vince, given his sense of humor, decided to go along with it. Now, part of the reason that Shane is coming back with all this is he wants to keep WWE around and continue that legacy for the next generations of McMahons. Because this is around the time Shane has had children, Stephanie has had children. While Stephanie's are Levesques with their name, they are genetically also McMahon, so him wanting to have it for that next generation makes sense. But with how Vince is, especially during this decade, where even though they're making money from all their TV deals, creatively, it flows. Sometimes they have a good storyline, sometimes they get ruined, sometimes they have a bad storyline that gets saved, and sometimes they have a bad storyline that just doesn't work. And part of that, of course, we could write a dissertation on, but Vince. Now, they go back and forth, and this, of course, is the infamous promo where we get that moment where Vince drops that F-bomb, you know, give you another fucking beating, that drove the internet wild. We only see part of it on the live show, but you can find the video of it. I think the video of it's still somewhere on YouTube, the fan cam one. Well, with this, Vince says, yes. Okay, here's what happens. We are going to have a match take place in Mania. Here's the thing. You win, you get control of Monday Night Raw. I win, I get that lockbox. And they agree. And Vince essentially pulls a Teddy Long in this whole thing by telling Shane that at Mania, inside Hell in a Cell, he's going one-on-one with The Undertaker. Holla holla. Which, if there's any part of this whole storyline that really doesn't make that much sense, I know someone's going to go, one, shut up. It's, why would The Undertaker even be involved in this? I know that they bring up a story reason, which, since it's been several weeks since I've actually watched this match, I don't remember it, but it's one of those things that's like, it makes no sense that he would do this, be a hired gun, unless you're trying to argue that in kayfabe, Taker has as much respect for Vince McMahon as he does in the real world. That's really the only reason it would work. But this is a storyline that is catered more towards big evil American badass heel Taker than it is Dead Man, the Last Outlaw Undertaker. Yeah. Even looking at it back, it's like, yeah, it would have made much more sense for that Undertaker. But even with that, in the match being booked not making as much sense, we knew, especially inside of Hell in a Cell, that this was going to be a spectacle match. And with that bonus, we all know that there was going to be one or two things that were going to happen in this match. Either Shane McMahon was going to get thrown off that cell, or he was going to jump off that cell. Now it turned out to be the latter. But it's one of those things that if none of those happened, then this match would have been, it would have been a waste. But of course, we end up getting there. We get the match. Shane comes out, you know, money, 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 money. He's doing his shuffle with his three sons. So that's a good little entrance there alone, which of course ties in the whole theme of family legacy. And of course, Undertaker comes out. It's his drawn out WrestleMania entrance like you would expect. Now, the match is what you would expect from these two at this point in their careers. I mean, Shane was never the best in-ring technician. Taker, early on, his matches were more psychology, but then he got better in-ring as he got better opponents and all that, and of course could develop the character to work a bit more without it having to be stuck in that rigid Michael Myers-esque style. But here, his body's starting to break down, so his matches kind of come in waves. Even with that, for this match, he's not that bad. You got to take in mind who he's in there with, but it is an all-spectacle match that is kind of carried a little bit by the psychology. And partially due to the fact you got Cole and JBL on the call. JBL, a guy who wrestled Undertaker multiple times. I mean, you know, the whole thing of the corporate ministry with the APA. And then, of course, later on, Taker in his battles against JBL in 04, 05-ish. And, of course, Cole has watched these guys since his early days, so it makes sense, their whole calls and building the match. Now, the match goes 30 minutes. And if there's any real major negative about this match, is that this match could have been about 10 minutes shorter, maybe 12 if you really want to do it. Because that's 30 minutes without the entrances. Because there are a couple parts in the match where you could really tell that they're just trying to kill time. And not a way that where you really notice it, but it's a part where where it is noticeable to a point. But it's not like, say, some other ones where you're like, okay, this match is really going long. Or from what I remember feeling it in the main event of this pay-per-view. But from the opening part to the end, there's only really like a couple of moments where I'm like, oh, that's a good moment. And I'm looking up for the notes real quick. And one of that is, there's a couple of good moments of McMahon reversing a Hell's Gate, trying to do a sharpshooter, things with trash can lids. And then, of course, Undertaker slamming McMahon through the broadcast table. And of course, you get the monitors, the metal toolboxes all in there. And it all leads to Taker being prone on top of the announce table and Shane climbing the cell, and everyone sells it right. And then at one point there is one person in the fan yelling, "Don't die, Shane, don't die!" And I think added to it. And of course, Shane looking down. And then he does his little cross thing and jumps. If there's any negative about this spot, I think more from the angle that they showed it from, it's that right when he jumps, Taker gets off the table. Now, I know this is a spot that you got time good, but with the angle they show it, which is the wide shot, it kind of kills it a little bit. I think it looks better when they show the alternate angle where it was more close and then staring up. So instead of it was more, it just comes off better. Like they could have shown that and have him jump and then cut to the other one right away. Maybe do like a little slight second delay to where you can kind of hide it a bit. But I know this is retroactively thinking of how they could have made it better, but it's just one thing I couldn't help but notice watching it. I don't remember if I thought this when I first saw this pay-per-view, but watching it back now, definitely it comes off. Now, of course, as I described it, Taker gets out of there and McMahon goes right through the announce table. And of course, Taker makes his comeback, and Shane is still like, bring it, even though you could tell he's got no more strength. Taker takes him into the ring, Tombstone City, and he wins. Of course, Shane gets taken out on the stretcher, thumbs up the crowd, Undertaker walks out smirking. And a little fun thing, this would be the final Hell in a Cell match that Taker would wrestle in. Kind of a decent one to go out on if you think about it, all things considered, him going out on a win inside of his match, as it were. Though, kind of going into why this match even happened in the first place, the night after this, in the aftermath, Shane got control of Raw anyway. Now, the briefcase was never mentioned again. It went to the land of dropped plot points, where it was rumored briefly with the anonymous Raw general manager, amongst other stuff. And as we're seeing, Taker, this would not be his last dance at Mania. Might be his last dance inside of the cell, but not his last dance at Mania, as he still had one normal match, a glorified squash match, and then his last ever match, which is a cinematic match. So for his last 3 shots, we do got a nice little interesting mix of things to go through. Now, as I've mentioned a couple times, his next match probably would have been best to end the streak on if you weren't going to give it to Bray Wyatt, and you decided not to call the audible and give it to Lesnar. On the whole, this is a decent match. It's just still one of those ones that I'm like, why did it even have to happen? It just seems like an excuse to get Taker on the card. And we know it's not like they had him on the card every year anyway. I mean, they had him on the card the next 2 years. 2018, I remember, because that was my first year at my current job, and I remember watching parts of the pay-per-view on my break and on my lunch. And then, of course, the COVID one. That's the main reason for the other one. And it's hard to believe it's been 5 years since that one. Now, whereas next, we're going to go into his match with the big dog, Woof Woof. But that, of course, is next time. Till then, everybody.